Hey, true believers, do you love politics? Do you love comic books? Well, Superhero Politics is for you. It combines the comical nature of politics and the political nature of comic books. Join us, like, share, and experience the world of comics and politics in a way that you never have before. This is Superhero Politics, and I'm your host, Michael Holmes. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Superhero Politics. I'm your host, Michael Holmes, and we're going to talk about jacking up some timelines. All right. Thank you guys for being with us and coming back. At the end of this episode, we got some really big news, some really great news that is going on both in the comic book world and the political world. I've got some announcements to make, but we're going to get into this episode. And for those of you watching on YouTube, you can see that I am wearing my Flash t-shirt because we're going to be talking about the Flash today. We're going to do a quick review of the movie, and then we're going to talk about the Flashpoint theory and how it intersects today with the rewriting of history that is being attempted in our US government. So, really quickly about the movie. Obviously, it didn't do as well at the box office as I think DC had hoped it was going to do. Certainly, they had high hopes for the production of this film, the script of this film, um, the place where this film was coming out in terms of the transition from the Snyderverse over to the new MCU or DCU. I'm sorry. And so, after a string of box office kind of failures with Wonder Woman 84 and Shazam Fury of the Gods and Black Adam, just kind of misses from the DCEU. There was hopes that the Flash was going to be that flashpoint, that reset, that they were able to jump off. And just on the aesthetics of the movie, I would say, it was pretty good. There was some shoddy little quirks with the CGI there, but overall, I think for what the Flash is, I think it was a decent. I think it was decent. I think the visuals were decent. I mean, the cast itself, they had some really big time cameos in there. I mean, from three different Batmen with Keaton and Affleck, and at the end, for those of you who haven't seen it, I mean, um, Clooney shows up as Batman, and so they had Gal Gadot in there as Wonder Woman and Momoa, Michael Shannon as Zod. I mean, they had some really big cameos in there, and so Sasha Calle was there as Kara Zor-El. So I think overall, I think the film itself had potential. I just think it got derailed by forces outside of its own power. And so, as we look at what happened to the film and look at how it performed worse than Green Lantern, which was a surprise. It performed worse than Green Lantern, and I think a lot of that had to do with the controversy surrounding Ezra Miller. And so, but my review of the film has a lot to do with Ezra Miller's performance. Now, whatever you think about him personally, whatever you think about Ezra Miller personally, if you take a step back, if you just take a step back and really, really, really take a look at that performance, that was a S tier, God level acting performance. There's no really other way to say it. There's no other way to say it. For him to establish playing a dual role of the same character with completely and utterly different personalities. Completely and utterly different personalities, and to have character development in both of those in opposite directions, to have character development of both of the variations of the Flash in opposite directions was astounding. I found myself literally sitting in the theater marveling at this guy's ability to portray this character. Now, I try to suspend judgment. I just go to the film, watch the film, and just review. But there is no way that you can sit there and say that that was not a top-notch performance of not only Barry Allen, the character, but the younger version of Barry Allen and the Flash. I'm sorry. This was a fantastic acting portrayal by Ezra Miller. And I hope everyone who gets a chance to see the film suspends everything that you know about him. I know that's hard in this day, but you gotta take a look at this performance. It was, to me, one of the most incredible acting performances that I've seen, not just in a superhero film, but in the last 10 years in movies. I thought it was astounding. And I've seen people play two dual characters, but I've never seen the entire film be centered around the interaction between the same character in the dual character with that much of the dialogue being against back and forth between the two with completely different personalities. I'm I'm sorry, but this was a fantastic performance. So I just wanted to give that quick review of the Flash and then connect it to our political theme of the day, which is the rewriting of history. In the film, Barry runs back in time because he wants to save his mom, because he feels like it's a tragedy and it messed up his life. It messed up his dad's life. His dad was in prison, about to be sentenced, to death because of his supposed murder of his mom, and they couldn't figure out why his mom was killed, and his dad took the fall for it. So he's decided, look, I have all this power and this ability. I can run back in time and fix it all. And even when he was talking to Bruce, Ben Affleck's Batman, he said, "Hey, look, I can save my parents. I can save your parents. I can go back. I can do all of this. You make it like it never happened." And obviously, Bruce, being the genius that he is, said, "Hey, look, hey, you have to understand." And even Barry was cognizant of the fact that, yeah, there's going to be some potential pitfalls. I can't, interact with myself. I can't do all this. And immediately he comes across himself. And so the entire endeavor is shot to shit, like right out the gate. But he tries to make the best of it. But then he starts to realize the incursion that he created had already messed up the timeline. And not to get all quantum, E equals MC square here in this episode, but you think about time in the sense of like a rock hitting your windshield, right? You're going down the road 70 miles per hour and a rock hits your windshield and it glances off. So depending on the size of the rock, at this point, it could be a small divot or a small little crack in your windshield with little splinters, right? Like a little stars, a little starfish, a little snowflake. Or you could hit it and it could just make a big singular crack and just kind of run along the expanse of your windshield. So yeah, that could be what Barry was intended. Okay, we're gonna make this incursion point with this little indention, and then this timeline is gonna go. But the potential for so many different timelines or what's centered around that point of impact. And we saw that later in the film as he's going back and he's keep trying to undo this canon event that is going to happen regardless of what you do. And this is why I want to talk about what happened in the Supreme Court and how across the country conservatives are trying to rewrite history, specifically Black history, in terms of education and affirmative action. And so they're attacking education, and they're doing it by trying to rewrite history. First, in Florida, before we get to affirmative action, in Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis and the Florida legislature just passed a bill that highlighted how to teach Black history. Now, no other history has these caveats or these um, designs around misinformation or miseducation of groups. AAPI, Hispanic, or Native, none of these groups have the type of stringent, divergent curricula that Black history has. And so, in the latest just frontal assault on Black history, Florida has decided that you can teach slavery, but you must teach that slavery had some inherent benefits for African Americans or enslaved people. Slavery had inherent benefits for slaves. That is what Florida is teaching now. It boggles my mind, and it makes this episode all the more poignant simply because if you look at what they're doing, they're trying to rewrite how we view the atrocities of slavery. So the generations coming behind us will have this watered down view of how bad slavery was and the ripple effects that carried forward hundreds of years later. This essentially cements the ability of certain of groups to continue to discriminate against African Americans generations to come simply because kids won't know how bad the history of this country is. And so it is not just started at the K-12 level. It is now also moved into the collegiate level because the Supreme Court rolled back affirmative action. Now, this is just the next wave of assaults on the civil rights era. So 1963 to 1968, LBJ passed a series of civil rights acts around discrimination and housing and voting and so many things that have had attempted to close the gap in achievement and wealth for Black Americans versus white Americans. And they have never not stopped being attacked and undermined. So 2008, Barack Obama wins. 2 years later, the Supreme Court gets rid of the VRA, Section 4 and Section 5. And since then, voter suppression all through the South has been rampant. Whether it's been voter ID, the closing of um, polling places, the inability of DMVs to be able to issue the correct the correct IDs, getting rid of Sunday voting, getting rid of same-day registration, getting rid of registering 16-year-olds, getting rid of all the things that would inspire a generation to be able to take part in voting. All those things have been attacked. Gerrymandering, wiping out Black centers of voting power, diluting them, splitting districts to further dilute power. Hell, in Alabama, there's a town that's 85% Black, yet the entire town council and mayor is white, and now we have a Black mayor, and they refuse to seat him. In a town in Alabama, they just refuse to seat him. And a lady, and the new mayor said that the town in 2023, a lady told the new mayor, the new black mayor that was elected, that the town wasn't ready for a black mayor. It's 2023. But here we are now, fast forward to the Supreme Court, who has just rolled back in the Dobbs decision, just rolled back abortion access and rights, Roe v. Wade. They've now taken on affirmative action. So 100 years of precedent is gone in just one session of the Supreme Court. The John Roberts Court will live in infamy forever. But the rewriting of history is now front and center because we're talking about getting rid of vast sections of the Voting Rights Act because they are deemed discriminatory to white people. Now, I really want you to hear that. They are discriminatory to white people. Now, let's take a look at the statistics. Black people make up 3% of Harvard. And Harvard and the University of North Carolina, my home state, was named in this suit because they explicitly said we are going to consider race in our decision makings. Why? Because we want the most diverse council, we want the most diverse campus with the most diversity of thought, with the most diversity of backgrounds that we possibly can. We understand that that makes learning institutions better. We get that. So, what are we going to do? We're going to consider that. So, they were explicitly named in the lawsuit. So, when this decision comes down, it says Harvard, North Carolina, no school can take into account race and admit on the basis of race. Now, the irony of all this is that Clarence Thomas, second African American to ever sit on the Supreme Court, benefited from affirmative action. He's literally where he is today because of affirmative action. And now he's trying to rewrite history so that he can say that he made it on his merits. And I'm not saying he's not. I'm not saying that Clarence Thomas didn't earn his way there. What I know for a fact is, in terms of a being a constitutional scholar, Clarence Thomas was never thought of as that level of judicial thought. So whatever you want to say, maybe he's projecting a little bit. But right now, they're saying that African Americans have disproportionately benefited at the expense of Asian Americans and white Americans. Now, Asians make up 25% of Harvard's student body. Asians are 6% of the population, maybe less. So Asians are represented 4 times their population. African Americans make up 12%, which is right in line with the population, 13% of the population of the United States. Now, where the issue comes in is that legacy students make up 33%, a third. And of that third, 70% are white. 40% of that, they would not qualify. Now, here's the thing about affirmative action. Affirmative action didn't take a D student out of the inner city of Detroit and put them in Harvard. No, every single student, minority student, who would have otherwise been considered affirmative action qualified on the merits of their academic performance. Every one of them. Every one of them. A lot was made by people like Joy Reid and Michelle Obama, saying, Sheila Jackson Lee saying, yeah, I went to Harvard because of affirmative action. And what they really said was, hey, I was in a place where Harvard would never come to recruit. Affirmative action only forced Harvard to come to find me. They didn't lower the standards. They didn't change any of the admission process. They just had to come and find me now because there was a direct edict from the federal government that said they had to expand admissions for minorities to balance the playing field of his against historical inequities that this country never fixed. And now here we are, just barely over 50 years, and everybody's saying, oh, everything's good. As a matter of fact, we've gone too far and we're hurting white people. Now, this is going to be tough, white people. It's about you about to get some tough words. So, you know, if you're still here after this, know I'm saying it in love. The reason why you're so against affirmative action, and white women have benefited from affirmative action more than any other group, white women have been the beneficiaries. White women were included as a protected class in the original affirmative action case, and white women have since reaped the benefits in education, in in entrepreneurism, and corporate America, finance, government, wherever it is. 77% of the jobs that are considered affirmative action went to white women. So even the laws put in place to help minorities were co-opted and colonized, and Black women, minorities lost out. So now, just like Barry runs back in time and damages the timeline and has unintended consequences, this will also have unintended consequences. And the reason why I say that progress is a canon event is because it always happens. Now, if you're watching the movie over and over, Barry tries to stop Sasha Calle's Supergirl, Kara Zor-El, from dying. He runs back in time. He runs back. But every single time she dies, every single time he runs back, she dies. Every time he changes something, she dies. And it doesn't matter. It's a canon event. It is supposed to happen. It is going to happen. No matter what you do, it's going to happen. And by God, progress in this country is a canon event. Slavery ended. Reconstruction, Jim Crow, segregation. All these things happened, and every single point, progress came through. Now, is it 100%? No, but the country is moving forward. African Americans are moving forward. We're making progress, and I think that is the fear. Is because here comes the tough love, white people. Your privilege and your inherent racial advantage has made you soft. It has made you mediocre. And I always say, this is the saying, you keep talking about the meritocracy that you say you want, but you really don't. And the reason I say that is because you can't hide mediocrity in a meritocracy. You can't do it. So as Black people become more educated, as opportunities open up for Hispanics and immigrants, you find yourself struggling to compete on the field that you designed. And so what do you have to do? You have to take out the structural components of your competition. You have to take out the ability to gain an education equivalent to yours. You have to take out the ability to acquire capital equivalent to yours. You have to segregate through policy rather than fear and violence. And it's getting harder and harder and harder for you to maintain those controls, especially in a world that is now seeing the value of embracing the diversity that is changing this country. Now, the problem, the unintended consequences of these actions could be that white America suffers. And I say that because at some point, it's going to occur to people of color that we are not wanted in your spaces. And there may be a natural resegregation. What you may see is you may see Black kids, instead of their dream to get into Harvard and Yale and Stanford and Brown and Columbia, are going to turn around and say, you know what? I'm going to go to North Carolina A&T, and I'm going to bring up North Carolina A&T. I'm going to go to Coppin State. I'm going to go to Howard. I'm going to go to Morehouse. I'm going to go to an HBCU, and I'm going to bring that up. And you're going to see Black academics doing that. And ultimately, what may be the linchpin is when the Black athlete follows. Because here's some more tough love. You may not want us in your classroom, but you damn sure want us on your field. You damn sure want us on your basketball courts and your baseball diamonds. You damn sure want us there. So you can try to erase history all you want and keep us out of your classroom, but the history you're trying to keep is you used to segregate us and not put us in your locker rooms. But you don't want that to go away. And so the unintended consequences are going to be, eventually, we are going to figure out a way to overcome this. And one way that's always happened is, guess what? These same groups that have fought to protect affirmative action have now said, you know what? The worst affirmative action is legacy admissions. You're unqualified. You're only at Harvard because your dad's name is on the building. Your granddad's name is on the building. Your your family gives $100 million every year to an endowment. That's why you're there. You're a mediocre student, but you're at Harvard. You're at Yale. You're at Brown and Columbia. You're at Vassar. You're at all these Ivy League schools, and you don't qualify. And so now they're attacking legacy admissions. And so now what you're going to have is you're going to have a bunch of rich scions who just knew they were going to wake up one day with their last name being whatever it is and walk into an Ivy League school. And now that opportunity is gone, that entitlement is gone, simply because you couldn't accept the 3% of Black kids who went to Ivy League universities via affirmative action. I believe we call this hoisted on your own petard. Oh, and look at here I am facing the consequences of my actions. And so what happens is, every time Barry went back, he tried to rewrite history. He tried to change it, but it just kept coming. And just like African Americans, we're going to keep coming. We are not going to stop. Affirmative action is just another bump in a long, winding road to ultimately what Black Americans are going to achieve. Polling after polling says that no matter what happens in this country, the most optimistic people in this country are Black people. Because we know what we've overcome. We know the adversity we faced. And we keep persevering because we know we're going to be victorious. So Barry ultimately came to the realization, as I believe white America will, I believe that for whatever Clarence Thomas's machinations are, he may not in his lifetime, but the generations that follow him will, is that this country is better when it's diverse. economic studies have shown, and I'm doing this because that's something that I'm working on right here in High Point, North Carolina, as I'm working on restorative economic policies as a member of city council. I wrote a policy brief on this, is that over the last half century, $51 trillion in GDP has been lost. Brookings, International Monetary Fund, CNBC, Harvard School of Finance. You can find this anywhere, and I'll put some of those links in the show notes. But every single one of those studies has shown that this country has lost $50 trillion, 16 trillion since the year 2000, because of structural racism, because of institutional racism. This country is poorer and weaker. If we were less racist, there's not a single country on earth that would be within a millennia's chance of catching us as an economic power. We're a $30 trillion economy. We should be an $80 trillion economy. But because of structural racism, because of the denial of capital and entrepreneurism, because of higher interest rates and higher foreclosure rates on African Americans, because of our xenophobic inability to embrace the immigrant population who comes in and doing this. Florida is falling apart right now. It's falling a fucking part because DeSantis and his policies have chased off that segment of the labor population, and houses are falling apart that can't get finished being built. Crops are rotting in the field. You've got freaking hotels who can't staff because they don't have the people. All because mediocrity has won the day in the white community. All because you're trying to hide your mediocrity in a meritocracy, and it will stick out. And so what's going on is now you're suffering, and I'm trying really hard not to have schadenfreude because I don't want the pain that's inflicted on my country, but it's hard not to sit back and realize what's happening because of the choices that you made, because you've tried to rewrite history, because you've tried to change the past. The future is in doubt. So yes, we are at a flashpoint. We are at a flashpoint. We are at a reckoning. We're at a nexus, and we're facing a canon event because guess what? Progress has never been stopped. It's been slowed, but it's never been stopped. It's been delayed, but it's never been denied. And progress will continue in this country. So, as we wrap up, I just want you guys to think about what it means to have a diverse country, what it means to have diverse opinions and diverse uh, circles of friends, extended family, what that means and how much better and much more rich your life has been because of something, because you've learned from some folks and some people that you don't know. Think about the richness that diversity has brought into your life. Think about every time that you travel to a new country, you come back with a different perspective. You come back with an expanded worldview. But if you segregate yourself and you wall yourself off from all the things that are different from you, when you are faced inevitably with those changes, you can't cope. And that's what I'm afraid is going to happen years from now. And this country will be torn apart because of it. I believe that we're going to overcome it. I'm continually optimistic, but we've got work to do, folks. And I am really grateful to be in the fight as an elected official. And so, one thing, thank you guys for being with us today. There's a lot of information that's going to be in the show notes coming up here, but big news, guys, big news. Next weekend, I in Superhero Politics Podcast will be moderating my first fan panel at GalaxyCon in Raleigh, North Carolina. And so I've been checking it daily, and folks are lining up and they're liking the event, and they're gonna come, and we're gonna film live from there, and we're gonna take questions, and I'm gonna get a lot of great footage there. But it's a really huge event. Speaking of the Flash, one of the guests who will be there will be Grant Gustin, Stephen Amell from Arrow, Karen Gillian who plays Nebula in the Guardian series, a lot of Star Wars fans, a lot of Star Wars folks there. Billy D. Williams, a lot of great folks. Vampire Diaries folks, Ian Somerhalder, Paul Wesley. A lot of cool folks are going to be there. I'm going to try to get some interviews. Going to try to not ambush folks, but maybe just step in and introduce myself, and maybe down the road have some of these great guests on Superhero Politics Podcast. So I'll be there next Saturday, the 29th, and we'll broadcast live from there, and we'll also record our next episode. And it is political season, guys. You can't have superheroes and not have politics, because it's Superhero Politics Podcast. I am running for re-election, guys. I officially launched my campaign on July 7th, and things are going well. And if you want to follow my campaign, if you want to get to know what we're doing, the issues that matter, my platform, you can go to homesforhighpoint.com, HOLMESFORHIGHPOINT.com. And that'll be in the show notes as well. So please go check out my campaign. If you want to contribute, cool. If you don't, just send a well wish and just say, hey, I appreciate the support and the encouragement. This is a tough job, but I love it, and we'll continue to do the best that we possibly can to move High Point and the state of North Carolina, and ultimately the country forward. So love you guys. Thank you. Enrich your lives. Get to know someone that's different from you guys. Be kind to one another. Show compassion. And remember, we're coming up on political season and voting season. If you ever feel powerless, always know that you do have a power. If you are eligible to vote, make sure that you exercise that, because voting is a superpower, and you can change the world with it. And I know that for a fact. So just remember, until next time, this is your host, Michael Holmes. This is Superhero Politics. And remember, you don't have to be superhuman to be a superhuman. Until next time, love you guys. We're out. What's going on, true believers? Thank you for your continued and growing support. If you're enjoying the content that we're producing here on Superhero Politics, I ask that you subscribe anywhere that you can find podcasts. That means iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher. You can find us at Buzzsprout, and also on our social media at Superhero Politics on Twitter, at Superhero Politics on Facebook, Superhero Politics on Instagram, and Superhero Politics on TikTok. Like, share, join us, and if you would have any topics that you would like to share, or just questions that you would like to ask me, you can send your emails to superheropolitics@gmail.com, and we'll do an episode where we answer your questions. Thank you for your continued support, and remember, always speak truth to power.